to the Texas Policy Summit. You can clap. You don't have to do that silly, like, that thing. Yes, I know. Look who came. We have the rock stars of Texas. It's very exciting. Before we kick off, I'm very excited and I want to give gratitude to our sponsors of this panel, Parent Empowerment Coalition members and leaders, Libre Initiative, and Americans for Prosperity. They are out on the road. Yes, give them a huge round of applause. They are out on the road educating Texas right there alongside the governor and TPPF and all our other coalition members. So we're so grateful that you sponsored this incredible panel with, I said rock stars. They're rock stars in their own field. So please join me in welcoming Representative Chairman of House Public Education Committee, Brad Buckley, and baseball all-star Mark Teixeira. So Chairman Buckley is serving his third term in the Texas House of Representatives, his fourth. Somebody got this wrong. Well, I was about to say, in his second term, so it was your third term, he was appointed the chairman of the House Public Education Committee, which, as y'all know, this is where the future of Texas is being set up for success or failure. And he was handed what I would say is a gift from God, but he was handed what some people might say a bomb. When the chairman took the lead and set out to totally reform what we know as education in the state of Texas. The chairman's leadership and his passion for children, always for children, the students of Texas, led him to put forth an education savings account piece of legislation, which, as we know, did not make it across the finish line in 2023, but we are here again to make sure it happens. Please join me in welcoming the chairman of the House Public Education Committee, the leader in the fearsome threesome with Governor Abbott, Speaker Burrows, Chairman Buckley. And now I would like to introduce our really famous person that has decided to join us and step into the arena of the parent empowerment movement. He did so over a year ago when we were connected, and he said, I care about kids and I want to help the kids of Texas. Mark Teixeira is a former Major League Baseball player. That's where most of you probably know him, with both the Texas Rangers, and won the World Championship when he was with the New York Yankees. Cheer, you can cheer for the yes. So after he concluded his illustrious baseball career, Mark's heart for children is what has guided him both in helping set up charter schools and also be a part of the parent empowerment mission, because as we know, it's about empowering all parents. Mark graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration from the Georgia Institute of Technology, and he currently lives here in Austin with his 3 children. He has one senior who has just committed to go to Texas A&M. All right. There you go. There's no other whoops or anything. Isn't that supposed to follow, right? Yeah, I feel like y'all need a little bit of that today. Chairman Buckley is an Aggie as well, and after Greg had to wear that orange jacket, I feel like y'all deserve a little love today. So I'm just going to start off with asking, Mark, what brought you here today?
So about 2010, I was playing for the New York Yankees, and I got approached by a group of charter school advocates in New York saying, hey, Mark, we know that you care about kids. I'd done some work with different youth organizations during my career here in Dallas or in Texas when I was playing for the Rangers and other stops along the way. And I said, let's sit down and have some coffee. And hearing the stories, some of the horror stories about public schools and the kids that were getting left behind in New York just broke my heart. And so right away, I started joining some of the charter school movements in New York City and some of the toughest places to get anything done from a legislative perspective. And, had 10 years in New York kind of fighting the good fight. And when I came here to Texas, I was just floored that we didn't have school choice already in Texas. And so meeting some people like Mandy, I said, all right, well, if it can get done in New York, we sure as heck should be able to do it in Texas, so that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining joining the mission. Chairman, what brought you to this stage?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be with you, and you know, I'm over my shock of meeting Mark Teixeira. So anyway, but sorry, just had to say that. But huge fan, bigger fan now, knowing that we share the parental empowerment in common, right? So, but anyway, I come from a background of public school, attended public school. My wife's a public school educator, has been for 32 years, grandson of a football coach, 3 kids that went to public school, but I always felt like that I had a lot of choice. I'm a veterinarian by day, have a pretty good practice. I was always able to do whatever it took to make sure that my kids got what they needed. I could drive them there, I could get them tutors, I could take them to dance lessons, we could do whatever it was necessary. But growing up in rural Bell County and around some kids that are many of affiliated with Fort Cavazos, which used to be Fort Hood, maybe Fort Hood again here pretty soon, there were kids there that were really that struggled. They came from backgrounds and had challenges that my kids never had, and they were friends with my son and I'm friends with my daughters and the things they had to go through, and I always thought, why in the world is their future dependent upon this one pathway? And all I've ever said is we need to give parents every tool in the toolbox to make sure that their kids have as good of a future as what I had. This country has been really, really good to me. I like to think I've worked hard, tried to have a great veterinary practice, have a great wife. She's been successful. But this is the 8th largest economy in the world. If we're not working every day to unlock the promise of this great state for every kid in Texas, then we do not have our eyes on the prize. And so that's why I'm here. I love our public schools. I love charter schools. I love private schools, but I love the kids of Texas more. And so whatever it takes to get them the opportunities that they deserve as they say now, what does it say? I'm here for it.
There you go. Yes, well done.
I've got jokes.
It always tickles me when I hear people try and use the lingo of like the 20-year-olds and 16-year-olds and things like that. But you did it right.
I can feel my children's eyes rolling right now.
Right. All right, I'm here for it too. So let's talk about, so Mark, you talked about getting involved in the charter school system. But as someone that has been at the absolute pinnacle of your career in the sports field, I mean, top of the world, literally, when y'all won the World Series, you could choose to donate to really anything, including the public school system. What was it? Why did you elect to spend your time and your resources, your treasure, to support the charter school movement, specifically when you were in New York?
It was really, not to use more sports puns, but they needed teammates. Mm-hmm. Public schools, generally speaking, were well funded. Are well funded, and whether it's a private school or a charter school that's just trying to kind of lace up their boots and go to work every day, they need that support. They're not going to get fully publicly funded, and I literally would see teachers show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and leave at 8 o'clock at night because they cared about the kids. They loved those kids so much, and how can you not just fall in love with that type of movement? How can you not, be moved to support people that love kids? And from my standpoint, just like Chairman Buckley was saying, it's opportunity. And if you can give kids an opportunity to succeed that they wouldn't otherwise have, to me, that's where I wanted to invest.
Thank you. You brought up funding, which is a really great point. So here in Texas, we have this conversation a lot about funding, and we're oftentimes not just pointing out the funding, but we're pointing out the expenditures. So, Chairman Buckley, would you like to jump into one of the myths around Texas education funding of, are we just getting $6,100 per student to fund our public school kids?
Well, no. That is what's called the basic allotment, and then There are different add-ons, if you will, to that. And it varies by child. In Texas, it's a very complicated formula. It is very complicated. And what you'll see is, depending on the needs of children as defined by the state of Texas, there are additional allocations or adjustments or allotments that child sort of generates for the schools. And I think the theory behind it is that a child from poverty that faces those challenges, children with intellectual challenges and special education needs, will take more funding. And so, I mean, it varies from child to child, but, like in some of the districts in the district that I represent, if you look at the revenues and versus the number of kids, it's $14,000 something a kid. It varies across the state. Now, you go to more affluent areas and all that, and those numbers will be lowered because there aren't as many add-ons. But, $6,160 is the starting place in public school funding. It's not the end. And so any comparison that is made that's what a public school child gets versus what an ESA student would get is just not accurate.
Thank you for helping to dispel that myth. And just to elaborate and hammer it home a little bit, in the 2022-2023 school year, the funding was per student average was over $15,000. And when we look at the expenditures, because, I guess a lot of times school districts decide they don't have to stay in budget, but it was $16,792 per student on average. So I think it's really important when we're talking about the funding and what's going on in our schools. New York, for example, is one of the highest funded, if not the highest funded, at over $30,000 per child. And what capitalists know, which you all are in your private lives, is that does funding always improve the results?
Well, I can tell you no. and I think, Chairman Buckley and I were talking earlier, is that I'm glad we're having this conversation now, that this is being put to a vote now, because if you wait too long, the public schools turn into what's happening in New York, happening in Chicago, some of these cities that are not ideal for poor kids, working class families. And I think Texas has an opportunity to take whatever its funding is needed now and say, if we really invested in those kids and put it in the parents' pockets, how would you spend it? Because that's what this is all about. It's giving the power back to the parents. It's not telling bureaucrats and administrators how to spend the money. It's like, all right, parents, where do you want your kid to go? Here's your credit. Provide an opportunity for your kids. And that's why I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. That's 100% correct. As parents who know and love their children best, they should be the ones directing the money. I would love to hear, I kind of asked y'all high level why you're here, but I know that each of you have shared personal stories with me about the mom or the dad or the teacher that have done something, that have said something, that have experienced something in a classroom or with their child that really did enforce why we're on this mission to empower parents. Chairman Buckley, would you like to talk about either a family or a particular teacher that have really touched your heart and why that this is so important to you?
Yeah, back home in Killeen, there is a private school that is basically located within a former public elementary school. It's called Oak Creek Academy. It is it's operated by a dear friend of Susan and ours, that Dr. Tracy Hansen, who I went to elementary school with. My mother was a first grade teacher, and she has her brother has some special needs, and she's always had a passion for that. She's a former public school teacher. She's received her doctorate, and she founded a school for kids with special needs. And what she found is that for lots of different reasons, there were children attending public schools that were not receiving the types of services that really allowed those children to thrive. Many of the children were on the spectrum. They had other learning challenges. But for whatever reason, it wasn't working out. And so she began to sort of double down on this, and through local philanthropy and a board of directors made up of moms and dads that had kids in the school, they kind of live hand to mouth. And they are not the prototypical $40,000 a year private school that you hear that gets sort of bannered around in this discussion. Their tuition is like $9,800 a year. But what you'll find is you'll find a family, and dad may be an E3 in the military. Mom may work a job, an hourly job at a local, maybe a restaurant or what have you. And sometimes, and this is an actual story, there was a family there where grandma had to move down from up north so that mom could work another job so they could keep their kids in the environment where they were learning. And for me, I can't look at that and say, well, that's a lot of sacrifice. There is absolutely no reason why the state of Texas, with our tremendous resources and our obligation as human beings to make sure that these children have every opportunity that they're entitled to, that we can't come up with a way for a parent-directed plan in ESA to help these kids. And if that is what always resonates with me, I love to go to Oak Creek on career day as a veterinarian. And I get the toughest questions and the joy that you see where kids are, where they're understood, where they thrive, and where everyone around them is absolutely in sync with all of their needs. The federal government isn't leaning in, telling, well, you got to do this and document that. And you're going to hear that debate when we have our hearing. Well, if a child with special needs has an ESA, they're going to lose their federal protections. I'm just telling you, that ain't all bad. I would argue those protections are hindering the ability for great teachers in public schools as well from delivering the types of services to kids that need it the most. And so that was my journey to school choice, quite frankly, as well as the choice that Susan and I had for our own kids. And I love Oak Creek Academy. Susan and I spend as much time as we can there. I'm going to have a community forum there, actually, this coming Monday night. It won't be as big as the forums that you've done, Mandy, but it'll be my version of it as we talk about issues important to Central Texas.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
That was an advertisement. Sorry about that.
Well, no, you can plug it. We can post it. Mark, would you like to share your story?
And I want to add that between my wife's parents and my parents, we have 3 public school teachers. So my mother was a public school teacher, and both of my wife's parents were public school teachers. So I completely understand, the effort and the love that many public school teachers have for the kids. That being said, my experience was not as positive going around New York City. And playing for the Yankees for 8 years, you have an opportunity to meet a lot of people, to have a lot of doors open to you. And so when you meet these families, it really changes the entire family. And one of the reasons, it's an intentional move. If a parent decides to move their kid from one school to the other because you give them that choice, whether it's through charter schools or ESAs, whatever it might be, they've made it an intentional choice that now they're bought in. So they're looking at their kids and saying, hey, I'm putting myself out there, you better follow through as well. So it changes the entire family. And the conversations that I had with the mom and the dad, a lot of times grandparents involved as well, is that this is not only great for Junior, this has been great for our family because the new school is something that we're all buying into.
That is a fantastic point. It reminds me, we hear this and see this all the time when I've had the fortune to travel with the governor, and I always go back to the very first parent empowerment event that we did at a school called Dallas Kings Academy. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. 100% scholarshiped kids, all minority kids. It's in the government housing area of Dallas. And I remember hearing the stories. You talk about it changing family trees. Before we went on camera and the news picked up, The governor sat and listened to stories from mothers, all single mothers. They were all minorities. And I'll never forget, tear up. There was a Hispanic mother that said, because my daughter got to come here, because I realized that she can have a future, I left an abusive man that was destroying both of our lives. Now we know Jesus, and now she has a future. And those are the schools, and those are the kids, and that's what you get to hear when you talk about them. And Tracy Hansen of Oak Creek told me a story. I'll also use this one. She said, I'd never thought about this before. When we talk about the bedrock of America and the values that made us great, it's the church and the family. The family unit is our strength. And she told me that one of her greatest moments was a mother came to her when she was able to put her child in Oak Creek Academy and said, "This saved my marriage." Because something we don't think about if you're not dealing with children, particularly with special needs, is parents who have children with special needs have a higher divorce rate. Their stress level is off the charts. They are constantly having to figure out who's taking the child to the therapy out, who's dealing with what's going on at school, who's doing this. And the parent told Dr. Hansen, my marriage was failing and falling apart. And being able to come to this school kept my marriage together, kept my family together, and set my child on a path to success. So when we talk about this, you were exactly correct, Mark. It changes families, it changes family trees, and it changes the entire trajectory for multiple lives. So, thank you. So, something that I always think is fun to hear from you, because I get to sit in on those House Public Education meetings, particularly, everybody's going to show up, all the opposition's going to show up when we hear the ESA bill. I would love for you to maybe share a story or two about your most crazy, insane opposition moments, whether it was public or private, to those entities, the cabal that historically stands in the way of children. And I say that because they want to keep children zoned to their school based on the street they were on. So let's hear some of the good stuff. What are your most shocking moments that you can share?
Well, thanks for watching.
I told you on Monday night.
We're going to have to get you a
I
hobby.
watched for those.
No, I appreciate it. It's, the hearings are something else, and you're welcome to tune in. But but it's important work, right? You want to lay a bill out. The people of Texas deserve to have their legislation and things that are being proposed well vetted, and they are. But I always try to do is just ask a question that sort of gets to the heart of what we're talking about. And so, for us, I talked about how we had choice. Susan and I live in a public school district, but we drove our kids to another public school district. It's public to public. And I just posed the question. I said, all right, we're talking about kids leaving, that we're defunding public schools. Did I defund my local school district when I drove my children from where we live to where they went to school? And the answer was, well, yes. And at that point, to me, it sort of crystallized the fact that, because I chose to live where I could be close to my cows and my horses and all that every decision I needed to make was really about what was best for the ISD and not best for my kids. And I can't get over that one, and so, I think that what we lose sight of here, and I think Mark made an unbelievable point about what the agency to make a decision, to be in charge of that decision does. I believe what it does is it does build an expectation that parent will have for that child, but also the fact that the parent owns it at that point. You know what I mean? When you own something, it's like being a renter versus owning your home. You value it a little more when you paid for it, when it's yours, when it's your decision to do that. And the other thing about this debate that we say is we're going to defund public schools. We're not. We're going to have teacher pay raise. We're going to incentivize more merit pay through teacher incentive allotment. We're going to have more money for school safety. We're going to make sure that our districts, we understand the struggles that some of them have, and we're going to take care of that. We can do both. It is not either or. But the reality is, if 50% of the third graders can't read on grade level and 50% of the eighth graders can't do mathematics on grade level, we have a problem. And if we choose to just keep doing the same thing over and over again, I just don't think that serves the next generation well. And so, that I got off track a little bit, but that's sort of the mindset that we're up against, I guess.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is we're pro-public schools, we're anti-failing public schools.
Amen.
I mean, that's like, I think what the last few months have shown us is common sense is back in our politics. And I saw it in New York. I've mentioned many times just kind of being in some meetings, and had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. There was a federal bill that was actually being discussed that was going to cut some after-school funding. And after-school programming is very important in inner cities, as you know. And so I was there on behalf of a charter school network in New York, lobbying some congressmen. And it was laughable, the politics that were being played, and no one talked about the kids. And I stood up. It was, they kicked me out not long after, but I stood up in the meeting. I said, does anyone care about kids here? Because, the R's and the D's, all they care about are their politics. I said, well, can we start talking about the kids? And I think now common sense is back. Now we're talking about the kids. What's best for the kids? What's best for the families, not what's best for the school districts. Because while those are important, the school districts are there to serve kids and families.
Absolutely. You nailed it. That's exactly what it is. When we talk about the family and the kids, something else that I wanted to ask you about, Mark, you proudly profess your love of Jesus and that you are a man of God, and you selected a faith-based school for your children. And I think a lot of families that are out there, particularly in the public schools right now, that are so frustrated, infuriated would be the word, about the identity politics, the culture wars, the far left mentality, this, hypersexualization, the criticism of America. Can you talk a little bit about your personal decision to choose a faith-based school and why it's so important for other families that don't have the means that come with being a world champion, that they have access to those opportunities as well?
Yep, and I'll go even further. I mean, I'm sitting here as a resident of Texas because I was tired of the politics in the Northeast. I lived in Connecticut, so I grew up in Maryland. I spent my college days in Atlanta. I got drafted by the Texas Rangers, spent 8 years in Dallas, and I fell in love with Texas as soon as I moved here. And when we were up in Connecticut in the Northeast, we were paying $50,000 a year for private school because that's what you did. And my kids weren't allowed to talk about God. My kids weren't allowed to speak up about, well, I like that president because he does X, Y, and Z. If you had any counter argument against a far leftist agenda up there, kids would get scolded in school. And my wife, we first thing was we go into the school, have a conversation. This is unacceptable. The next time we write a letter to the board. Finally, we moved. So we couldn't take it anymore. Moving to Texas, we knew in the Austin area, we knew there were some great public schools. So we live in the Lake Travis school district. We would have been fine sending our kid to Lake Travis, the Lake Travis schools. That being said, we wanted, because God is number one in our lives, God, family, country, and we wanted our kids to have a faith-based education. And they're not getting that from society. They definitely weren't getting that in the Northeast. And so when you go to school and the first thing you do is pray, you look people in the eye and say, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, that matters to us. And it's been great for our kids because our kids are far from perfect, just like I am far from perfect, but they know who God is. And they know it's important, even at school, when you're trying to get into college and you're trying to get a job, they know that God is first, and that's very important to me and my family.
Thank you. Yeah. That's exactly correct, and I think that it's important, regardless of where you're sending your children to school, particularly for believers, to know that they can stand firm and be proud regardless of where they're going to school. And right now, we get reports of this all the time, is that children are not allowed to talk about God, or they're criticized in the public school system. So it absolutely is essential that when we pass education savings accounts, whether it's being able to talk about your faith or being able for parents to push back, this is another lever or another tool in the toolbox for families who may want to send their kid to an excellent public school in their community, because they are able to go into the school system. They're able to go to the principal, and instead of just ignoring you like your teacher and principal and superintendent did at your private school, your $50,000 a year private school, my goodness. But that they're going to listen. We're going to be able to course correct an entire system that has stopped listening to parents, that has stopped listening to families and what's best for children. So thank you for sharing that story, because I think that is so important. Whether families choose a faith-based education or not, we can truly empower the parents that are still in the public system as well and give that back to their children. So thank you. Chairman, something that we are seeing, and this goes in the same vein of what I'm talking about, and a lot of times legislators like yourself from more rural areas say, it's not happening in my school. But just last week, we saw in Houston ISD, a mother step forth to read a parent testimonial about a child that was actively being transitioned, and it was being hidden intentionally by teachers in the school. Can you talk a little bit about what the legislature can do to shut that down? We already saw the governor say he's going to have this investigated, but why parents having choices allows them to push back in the public school system as well?
Well, it's horrifying that can go on in a school, and it is absolutely divorcing that student from the people in that student's life that should have the most impact on it, and that's the parents or the guardian, whomever. There's never been a more important time. Again, if 50% of the third graders don't read on grade level, and 50% of the eighth graders don't do mathematics on grade level, we've got some instructing to do. We need to teach. And these other issues that some children, I agree, there's confusion, there's challenges that kids have, but the first phone call should be to the parent. And if we can't agree that that's what we need to do, we're in a world of hurt. And so those are the things, and they don't happen it doesn't happen everywhere, but one is too many. And if we just say, well, some people have that, that is never right. That is never right. Moms and dads have the God-given right to direct the education of their children. They just do. And so, things like that really, what they do is I think that really sort of tarnishes all the great work being done in public schools across Texas and, and Rogers and Troy, even Killeen, little districts, big districts where, they're doing everything they can. But you see these instances of that, and you wonder, what are we doing? What are we accepting? And so the legislature must make certain that this type of behavior, this type of getting out of your lane must stop. And if we can't agree to do that, we have more work to do than I thought.
Thank you. Absolutely. I know I'm going to speak for everybody in this audience that we're going to support you and our great governor and the other legislators in finally putting an end to this, as Elon said, woke mind virus that has permeated far too many places in Texas. It may not be in the rural communities, but when we talk about how this spreads, how pernicious these activities that are often brought on by the associations and those that align with the far left, that they want the captive hold of our children. And while it may not be in your kid's school right now, while it may not be in your district right now, it just takes one bad administrator, one nefarious actor to slide it in and completely change the trajectory of a child's life. So thank you for taking that on, because it's incredibly important. Mark, you could be doing a lot of things with your time and energy and resources, and you've chosen to be here and be in a fight that oftentimes you're labeled, if you support empowering parents with choices, public school, private school, charter school, whatever their choices are, you're often labeled as an adversary or someone that hates our public schools. Can you talk a little bit about why this is so important to you as a person, as a father, to make sure that every child has access to a better education?
You know, from my standpoint, I've been so blessed. God gave me the ability to hit a baseball. I'm not brilliant. I don't have many other skills in life, but I could hit a baseball. And because of that, I do have resources, and I do have time, and I can choose to spend my time however I want. Now, right now, I tell people I'm kind of in a halftime of my life, because I have 3 teenagers at home. As you mentioned, one's going off to college. I want to spend as much time as my kids as possible. That being said, I am being pulled to serve. And when God gives you abilities, when God gives you resources, He wants you to serve others with those resources. And for me, why not pour into kids? Why not, even if it's just on the fringes, why not affect some change that is going to make kids' lives better? Because I hope that my kids will look back at their childhood and say, Mom and Dad, thanks for bringing us to church. Mom and Dad, thanks for bringing us to a great school. Thanks for for all of the opportunities you gave us. Just because your parents don't have means doesn't mean kids shouldn't have opportunity. And so for me, I'm being pulled to serve, and what better place to serve than the kids of this great state.
Thank you. Chairman, I want to ask you the same thing. I know you take a lot of shots for believing that we can do both. We can support great public schools, and we can empower parents with choices. What called you to this mission, and why do you continue, even though you are constantly taking arrows as the chairman of the House Public Education Committee?
Well, I used to, when my dad passed away during the last session on April the 9th, and he'd always, on weekends, we'd go and feed the cows together, or feed the horses together, and I'd get to griping a little bit. You'd say, oh man, this guy's saying something about me, and did you read this? And he'd kind of take it for a minute, and then he looked at me one day and he said, boy, your problem's self-inflicted. and what that means is I chose to use the podcast, I chose to get into the arena. I asked to chair the committee, and so if I'm going to do this, it's really not about me, but I'm going to lead on issues I think that matter. And if we can't agree that every child deserves an opportunity to go be something great, or whatever they can achieve, then we have lost our way. And the reality is that we have a moment in time to do things that might change the trajectory of a kid's life. And there's a time in politics that I've learned in my short tenure here of 6 years that you got to grab it when you can, because you may not get the chance again. But right now, I believe is the time, and I will have the hearings. I'll file the bills. I'll write the bills. I'll work with everything. I will take the slings and arrows. At this point, I care more about the kids than I do about that. God has blessed me with more than I deserve. I will tell you that. I have led a life that is, but I can't hit a baseball. Didn't get that part. But maybe He gave me just a little bit of that kind of pragmatic Texan problem-solving thing, that we've got a problem and we need to solve it. And if I can be a part of that, then I'm honored to do it. And we need your help. We need your voice. You would think right now that nobody in the world wants school choice. If you read the social media, which I don't recommend you do, but if you do. But we need the voice that says, wait a minute. It's like the folks in Salado, Texas, where I live at Johnny's, the best restaurant in Salado. Well, they will say, I don't know, I love Salado schools, but you know what? I wouldn't mind having that in my back pocket. You know what I mean? That's what this is about. It's about an option or a choice for a mom or a dad to say, you know what? This isn't working out. I need a better choice for my child. And I just will not stand in the way of that.
All right, we're going to open it up to audience questions. You're supposed to send them. Who do you send them to?
There's going to be a QR code.
There's, oh, okay, great. There's QR codes up on the screens, so you can text them, and it will be given to me, and that makes it a lot easier than trying to run microphones around this huge ballroom. So I'm going to start with the chairman. What can we, all of us, everyone in this room that's in the parent empowerment mission with you, and the millions of patriots all across Texas, what can we do to support you, your committee, and the legislators who are getting blown up right now on social media and sending emails in and all of that? What can we do to support you?
Well, first of all, you can pray for us. I believe in that. And, you know, we all have our own way of exercising that, and that's why this is a great country. And so that's the first thing we need. Second thing we need is we need your voice. Your steady, calm, committed voice that we are on the right side of this issue. And you need to tell those that represent you, and I'm sure it's varied across this room, that regardless of what they're hearing with the noise, this is the time for courage. This is the time to do the right thing. And that's what we need. You know, it's that simple.
You got it. And if anybody out there, I'll add, if you're on X or Facebook and you want to get involved in the battle to actually give them support, come to me afterwards. I will send you our rapid response folder, and you will have everything at your fingertips to defend our great leaders and our legislators who are going to have to take a vote that all of us in this room don't think is a hard vote, but to them, when they're being inundated with, association emails and calls and saying that, henny penny, the sky is going to fall and all the schools are going to crumble, they do need your support. So if you want to be a part of the rapid response team, come see me afterwards. I'll hook you up. Thank you. Okay, so next question. Oh, Mark, this one's for you. What is the best platform that people can follow you and help lift your voice up because you're being so courageous to stand up for parents?
Well, I'm not very active on social media. When you play baseball and hit 240 last year, maybe you shouldn't be looking at social media. I was laughing when the chairman was talking about different voices, getting on them and fighting that fight. I said you don't read the newspaper when you go for 4, right? Because it's going to be bad. So why are you reading it? I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily very active on social media, but I do have an X handle. And at times, Mandy, we've done some things on X, mm-hmm. and I'll do that as needed, retweeting some of the governor's posts about ESAs, and hopefully we can get this across the line.
Thank you. If you want Mark's handle, I'll make sure you have that too. Okay, next question. In cases of abuse of students, this one's for you, Chairman. In cases of abuse of students in classroom and associated district orchestrated cover-ups, why are schools protected from criminal prosecution currently?
Well, that's sort of the way we have our system set up, and I think we can look across Texas at very regrettable events that happen far too often. You across the country, it's staggering right now. And so I know that there'll be some legislation in the House that'll be coming out before too long that will address the parental grievance process and some of the things that we need to reform for that. Because, regardless of where we send our kids to school, whatever forum that is, we're taking a leap of faith that they will be protected, that they will be well served, and that they will have their educational needs met. And all too often there are conflicts, and there's bullying, and there's bad actors, there's often misconduct. All of that, it will be contemplated in some things that we're working on this session. And I think very soon you'll see some of that language out, and I look forward to helping my colleagues and Speaker Burrows bring that legislation across the finish line as well.
Thank you. All right. Ooh, that was a tough one. I'm trying to think which one of y'all sent that, because a lot of y'all brought that up to me. Okay, good job, Chairman. That was a great answer, and thank you for leading that to protect kids. Okay, this is another one for you. We've got some cheeky ones coming for you. Well, I say that.
I'll take the cheeky one.
Someone asked, why are the Red Sox far superior team to the Yankees? Who said that? Y'all are naughty.
I don't even know how to answer that.
I know, right? Pass? I know. I was like, okay. All right, here we go. All right. Should Texans be worried about losing high school athletic programs if ESAs pass?
No.
The Friday night lights aren't going to go off?
Absolutely not. I mean, there are wonderful public school programs, across Texas have great athletic programs, and kids will still show up, will still have Friday night lights. I always hear that, and I think that's one of the more kind of ridiculous arguments in my mind.
Mark, Major League Baseball player.
Can I chime in on that one?
Yeah.
So I think if Regents School of Austin played Lake Travis or Westlake in football, they would lose 100-0. I think the quality sports programs in our public schools are going to be fine. That's an interesting one though. That I wouldn't have thought that would be one of the arguments against ESAs.
Oh, it is. They have whole ads on it where the lights all shut down. Y'all seen those, right? It's wild. If you haven't, I mean, Trey Martinez-Fisher, he posts that one every week, so you can go follow that. Okay, let's see. We've spent a lot of money on security in schools. How can we protect kids inside the buildings from educator misconduct?
You have to have the right amount of oversight. And you got to listen to moms and dads. It can't be an effort. Here's what I've learned, and this is, I don't know, I'm kind of simple on these things. Sometimes my mind can't go there. Things happen that I can't imagine happen. And I think that what we have to do is we have to believe parents parents know, man, I'm a parent. I know when something's up. I don't know why I know sometimes, but I just know. And when that happens, and man, I've got grandkids now, that's a whole different ball game in terms of what would change your outlook on the world. But we need, schools need to listen to parents, and they need to investigate these things and make sure that it's investigated to the fullest. And then when misconduct is found, then there needs to be consequences. It's also in the bill.
Wonderful. Mark, what are your thoughts on baseball implementing the automatic strike zone?
I actually like it because why not get it right? Now, I understand the reasons that it may not happen. So for all the baseball fans out there, you see that box on TV. If you're a Rangers fan or an Astros fan, and your team's got bases loaded, bottom of the ninth inning, and that ball is 3 or 4 inches outside the box, but it's strike 3 and your team loses, you go crazy. So if we have the technology, I think we should use it. I think we should get it right. I don't believe it will happen, just talking to people around Major League Baseball, because there's a lot of issues. It might even, create more problems than it solves. But as a hitter who probably got more pitches called against me than he would have liked, I wouldn't mind the automatic strike zone.
Very good. Okay, Chairman.
It's a dog question.
No, it's not. But it's not a hard one. It's a good one. It's one that I think a lot of parents really want to know. Does Chairman Buckley think a cell phone ban will happen?
Yes. Yeah. They're doing it across, in many districts across Texas. I'm going to brag on her. My wife led the effort in Killeen, got the school board to go in. They didn't do a pilot. They just banned them. It is not without its bumps in the roads, but the number one problem that they mention with the cell phone ban is there's too much talking at lunchtime, and that means we're on the right track.
Mark?
I'll add that our school has a cell phone
Right.
ban, and it's great. My kids haven't complained once. The school knows where to find us. They have teachers everywhere. If they have a problem, they don't need to be Googling questions during school. If they have any issues, they can talk to some adults.
Yes, absolutely. My kids' school also doesn't have one, and though I have littles at 7, 5, and 3, it's great when my daughter says, "When am I going to get a cell phone?" I'm like, "Never." I mean, you know, maybe when you're 16 you can afford it, but it is helpful when everybody, when it is like you're not doing this, you're not having this happen in the classroom. So awesome, we're here for that. Okay. Mr. Chairman, given the, I'm going to paraphrase you on TASB, okay? Given the TASB campaign, the orchestration of how they control things and give guidance to the school boards, how do we win back the support and trust of public educators after the school choice fight?
You know, public school educators want kids to learn for the most part. If you want, I'll tell you what, the best thing you can do, if you become really disillusioned, get the opportunity, go, and I do this a lot, go to a local public school, and there's some great superintendents out there, and they'll say, pick a classroom, you go in there, and you'll see some of the best work being done in our Texas public schools. You'll see amazing teachers in that. Now, those teachers are 19,000 miles removed from the politics of some of the associations. And they're big, and they're well-funded, and they have a lot of influence. State Board of Education member Tom Maynard proposed a rule at a school board, at a State Board of Education meeting, I'm going to say maybe back in October sometime, where he basically rewrote a rule that said that when they do board training, which I was on a school board for 2 terms, about, you know, evaluating a superintendent, how to look at student outcomes, how to, you know, evaluate this or that, you know, all the things you need to know to kind of help direct a district. But basically what it said, the school board training cannot contain advocacy. I feel like, and maybe it's the school choice moment, but that everything they do is about advocacy. You know, it's about, I mean, I had a member tell me that a school board brought 2 students down from their district and sat in a member's office to say, please, please don't vote for school choice. First of all, kids ought to be in school.
It's illegal.
Kids ought to be in school. And that's not their lane. You know, and so that was literally on the floor today, and I nearly fell over. But yeah, we're, you know, we've got to support our teachers and understand that some of the groups circulating around are not necessarily that affiliated with your, you know, your great classroom teacher.
Right, absolutely, and that's exactly it. Is oftentimes it is. In case you didn't know, what the chairman is talking about is TASB-TASA, the Texas Association of School Boards, and their sister organization, the Texas Association of School Administrators, are here right now. They used your generous tax dollars to come get hotels so they could go lobby him and all the others. And I think today was the student day where they were bringing people. It's wild, you can't make this up. I'm pretty sure tomorrow is Alumni Day, in case there's legislators in here. The alumni of TASB are gonna come over to the Capitol and see you, but that's what's happening. And it's not the teachers in the classrooms. It is people that have been riled up and they're paid to come and advocate and say the same thing. So thank you for saying the quiet parts out loud. All right, Mark, This is a great question. What life lessons did you learn from your Yankees years, and in particular from the core four?
Oh, interesting. There's a right way to go about winning. You know, there's a way to win with class. And I think if you look at, take Derek Jeter, for example, one of the most respected players of our generation. He won with class. Mariano Rivera, same way. And I think too many times we see athletes not being great examples for kids, maybe not acting the way they should be acting off the field. When they win, not being gracious to the opponents. And I was just so impressed my entire time with the Yankees, just seeing guys like Derek Jeter win with class, and it's something I'll never forget.
Okay, Chairman. I love school choice because families need an escape from bad academics. Yes. Will there be any efforts to reform academics in public school after school choice passes?
That is already underway. Last session, thanks to the help of TPPF and many other organizations, we passed historic legislation to provide more rigorous, high-quality instructional materials for Texas public schools. We've even gone as far to have a state-produced curriculum that is built more upon a classical content. We have religious references in there to understand that, I was on a podcast and we were talking about curriculum. Some people are a little nervous about some of the religious references there, and they said, well, no, why do we have to have the religious references? I said, well, for instance, if you're gonna, if you exclude the religious references when you're talking about the founding of this country, it's like trying to teach cardiology but forgetting to talk about the heart. I mean, if you want to have a knowledge base, if you really want to know things, you need to understand the context in which they came to be. And from Martin Luther King's time in the Birmingham jail, his letter from the Birmingham jail and the biblical references there and all that, we're not proselytizing in our public schools. We're creating context and something that is real for students. And I would argue when we look at the number of school districts in Texas, that we want some good news today. We have 400 and something districts that are lining up. Thank you, Terry Leo Wilson, for all your help. She's a colleague of mine in the House. She was and going to be on the committee
Give Rep.
this
Wilson
session.
a big hand. She led this too.
Yeah, we have districts lined up because they know. I'm telling you, this matches the values of Texas, and it is on its way, and it's going to raise the bar in the classroom. And I think you combine that with parental empowerment, that you're going to see a complete change in the trajectory of where we're going with our kids.
All right, Mark, I can't miss this opportunity, but who was the toughest pitcher you faced?
Mariano Rivera, that's why I started playing with him. That's why I signed with the Yankees, so I didn't have to face Mariano Rivera anymore. But I want to add, I believe a byproduct, getting back to why we're all here, a byproduct of school choice reform will be better public schools, correct? I mean, that's just, again, back to common sense. When you have a little bit of pressure put on administrators to actually teach kids and have good outcomes, I think good outcomes will come. And I look at New York and Chicago and some of these other big cities, the chairman and I were talking about it. You can't get elected mayor in big cities like New York City or Chicago without the teachers' union vote. You just can't. They are so powerful. And so the incentives have been flipped. The incentives have been flipped to the teachers, the administrators, and it's not to the kids. And we can't let that happen here. So, once we flip the script and put the power back in the hands of parents and start, caring about the kids more, I think the byproducts all down the line, every single school will benefit because of this legislation.
Amen. I'm going to do the second part of that question. If invited, would you come testify in support of school choice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got nothing to lose. I really, and that's what I love. You know, people like me, and there's so many people in the private sector that are now working in the Trump administration. I mean, Howard Lutnick. So Howard Lutnick was a guy that I worked with in charter schools in New York. Many of you know his story on 9/11 and Cantor Fitzgerald, and now he's working for the president in a very important role. You know, he's got nothing to lose. He wants to serve. And for me, if I get up there and start talking to people that don't like what I'm saying, I go back home to my kids and we watch football games and we hang out in the backyard. You know, this isn't my job. I'm not a politician that needs this for any type of fame. I'm as famous as I ever want to be. I don't want to be any more famous. I'm actually trying to, slide under the radar. And I love public figures that are now getting into politics and government and just serving because they want what's best. They don't want a job or a career.
Thank you. Thank you for using your time and your star power to bring attention to this. Chairman, the overwhelming majority of parents and children who will benefit from ESAs are typically in districts represented by voters who vote against school choice. Can you explain this?
I think there is a disconnect with the messaging because it's easy. Here's the thing, and because you can look at this in two ways. You can look in rural Texas. The public school is the lifeblood of the community. You can go there, and it's the hub that everything sort of revolves around, which is great. I mean, that's some of my favorite parts of Texas. I love that. I love to go to Academy ISD near Belton, where I live, and go to the football game. You know what I mean? It's and do the coin flip. And, my granddad was a public school football coach for 40 years. I love that. But I think what happens a lot of time is they view that and they love it so much they just don't want anything to change it. That's what I think. But I think what we'll see, and I think Mark was very eloquent in saying, what it will do is it will improve everyone. Because I've had a pretty good run as a veterinarian. We've had successful multiple locations. I have been so blessed. But the one thing that always got my attention, made me rally my team around me to look at every bit of our operation, was when I saw the sign down the road said, "Coming soon, ABC Veterinary Clinic," and it didn't belong to me. That's a different mindset. That's where you get good at stuff, I don't want to oversimplify, but that's literally what some of this is about. It's just a little bit of disruption to say, again, 50% of the third graders don't read on grade level, and 50% of eighth graders don't do mathematics on grade level. It's just a fact. And it's not the test, and it is the fact that we just have to be better. Again, 8th largest economy in the world, unbelievable opportunities for kids. How are we going to unlock the promise of Texas for every kid, especially those that sitting there now that don't think they have a shot at it? We've got to get that right. Thank
you. So we have a question about opening the books. I'm trying to find it. They're coming in fast. The gist of it, I can't find it now in this thread. Is there something that can be done to better open the books and provide more transparency on where there is some misspending within the public sector?
Well, overall, our schools go through, and they have external auditors, and they have, they have to do certain reporting and everything, and you're entitled as a citizen and a taxpayer to be at the public hearings for the budget and public hearings for setting of the tax rate, and to be involved in that. And I've got a bill that I'm picking up, I believe, from the Senate, from Senator Colkhorst, that will provide more transparency for bond elections, just to make sure you can easily find out how much indebtedness there is in a school district. That's a huge piece of often what we have to pay in taxes. But I believe that there are processes in place now where you can get involved and understand the financial stability of that. And plus, there are external audits that they have to pass, and that's all public, in all public record.
Thank you. Okay, before we wrap this up, I want to close this incredible panel out with kind of how I close my podcasts out. I want you to look out to the parents and the patriots and to those cameras. Mark, I'm going to start with you because this is being live streamed and it'll go down in history. I want you to tell the parents, the patriots, and the legislators why being a part of the parent empowerment movement is so important and why we must provide education freedom with ESAs this legislative session.
This is important because the time is now, and if we wait any longer, it'll be too late. The system right now is about to break, and if it does break, kids all over Texas are the ones that are going to suffer. So we need to fix it. We need to make it better because every kid needs the opportunity that they deserve. And so that's why this is important.
Thank you. Chairman, close us out.
I would simply ask every colleague of mine, the next time they're at home, just ask a parent that may be totally pleased with what's going on with their kid. Let's just say, just pose this question. What if? What if, for whatever reason, because educating kids today is more complicated than ever, with all the outside noise and the bad influences that can be going on in a kid's life, what if that was your kid? And what if you weren't like Brad Buckley or Mark Teixeira that could create a choice whether ESAs pass or not? What if you couldn't? Why in the world would we not provide that opportunity for every parent in the state of Texas if they're confronted with that question to say, yeah, I have a choice? And with what we will do this session is if it comes down to this, we have well-funded public schools that can meet the needs of their students and have a parental choice option that will absolutely revolutionize education in Texas. That really is the choice that we have. We will do both, and we need your help to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you again for being here. And before you get up, give these men the round of applause that they deserve for leading the fight for Texans.